Hey, welcome guys back to the channel. Maverick here, ready for episode 10 of Vinland Saga. So, this episode was actually delayed, not through anything of my doing, but it was basically delayed because the typhoon hit Japan, I believe. And so, well, here we are anyways, right? But before we begin, however, I do want to make a recommendation to a video made by a YouTuber called Shadiversity. Now, first of all, I'm not affiliated with him, he doesn't know me at all, but I do watch his videos regularly, and he's a YouTuber that specializes in medieval combat, medieval arms and armaments, right? Armor, weaponry, that kind of stuff. And, well, he did a first impression series, a first impression video on Vinland Saga as well. To be honest, I was actually a bit disappointed he didn't go terribly in-depth with it, but, you know, he mentioned a lot of good points as well. Some of them I already mentioned before, like we both really dig how the weaponry designs and overall character designs are. We like the swords, we like the depiction of bow and arrow and of spears, and also inclusion of axes. We both also have a gripe, or minor gripe, with how the axe head is configured, and you know, you guys can just go check him out. He mentions a bit more stuff in regards to the other arms and armaments and whatnot. And we both agree that, you know, Thor and Thorkel are basically ridiculous, right? It's played up for the anime. But anyways, if you guys like to watch my work where I go a little bit more in-depth into all the different stuff, you guys will probably like his work as well. He mostly does his research, so I can wholeheartedly recommend him. Although I do believe that I go into this series from more of a overall historical perspective instead. So, anyways, with that out of the way, and of course, I'll be linking his channel maybe somewhere here or somewhere down here as well. But anyways, back to the series at hand. So basically, what's probably going to happen now is, well, what has already happened is Swain Forkbeard is going to take the main army to the surrounding countryside and conquer the rest of the surrounding lands, right? And that is presumably where also Thorfinn and Askeladd are heading as well. Meanwhile, Canute has been left in charge of the siege, and supposedly, right, according to his circle record, he's supposed to, well, basically just stay put until later on the main force rejoins, and then they eventually conquer or take over London around Christmas time, right? Are they going to take some liberties with it? Maybe, maybe not. Let's just jump into the episode and find out, shall we? Alrighty, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Like I said before, the beauty of this time period is you can get away with a lot of things because we have no records of what exactly happened. Alright, back to London Bridge. Ragnarok. Okay. So they're discontent now. Forko. This guy is like way too OP. You know, if he wanted to, he could probably just destroy all the longboats by himself. Of course, taunting the army to attack into a fortified position is a good strategy. Okay, so the men are getting discontent now. Okay. React. I'm really interested in the characterization of Canute here. I can see why some people call him best girl. With this hair like this. Yeah. So why don't you go attack them, dude? Ah. So they are going to reference the fact that they might know each other. Alright. Okay. Yep, let me skip this real quick. I'll see you guys in a second. And back. Really? Flash. Well, I can only guess that Thorfinn is probably dreaming right now. Thorfinn. Hey, is this a reference back to the first episode? Oh, no. Probably not. Or is this his imagination of Vinland? What Vinland is supposed to represent? Peaceful, great weather, lots of farmland, lots of grazing land. Yeah, this is definitely the Vinland of Thorfinn's imagination. Hmm. Okay, I guess he's this is his inner desires because he left his home. Hmm. Yep. Well, he listened to his own heart, though. Is this actually what happened back in Thorfinn's home? Killed Force? Yeah, he's reliving that time. But he's still gonna be hell-bent on revenge, right? Vinland! Even though he has no idea how it looks like. Just an imagination of it. Yeah, they pretty much got all of England without much resistance. Is this part of Askeladd's men? Okay, apparently so. Not yet, though. He's still in London. Never mind. Whatever. I just feel like I mentioned this last episode, right? Of all the things that they could take liberty with, why go at odds with something that's specifically referenced in historical texts? Is he actually going to? Kinda agree. What a pain. They're definitely bored. I mean, if you went to France, you could also get something similar to that. I'm just saying. But of course, there's lots of conflict there. Ooh. Looks like this dude doesn't want to. Yeah, he also thinks they're a bunch of idiots. Well, you have been following him for quite a few years, dude. Really? He glared at you since he was a little kid, dude. The Romans, right? If you look at the architecture and whatnot. And Askeladd was apparently a descendant of the Romans. If okay, that's news to me. Ragnarok. Well, I guess this is something that happens with religion a lot, and specifically with Christianity, where local people would try to adapt their local myths and customs and combine it with an outsider religion. So maybe in this case, they're trying to say Judgment Day and Ragnarok have merged. No, they're north. Ever the businessman. What? When I said take liberty and go ham with it, I wasn't expecting them to do something like this. Well, you guys got your fight. Okay, are we getting the confrontation between these two? Here we go. What will Askeladd do? Hmm. This guy's fired up. What? He's like, I got nothing. I got nothing to do with this. Oh man. He's going all in on this. Damn, Askeladd. Now that is a leader right there. I don't know where he got his confidence from, but that is a damn good leader. Yeah. Do not go quietly into the night. Ah. And Torten's just like, meh. Okay, I'm getting fired up as well. Good stuff, good stuff. I'll see you guys in a second. Alrighty, so that was episode 10, and even though there was no action, as usual there are a lot of things that I want to talk about, and you guys know the drill by now, right? I focus my discussion parts mainly on historical references within this anime. In this case, however, I will quickly give my thoughts on the actual episode at hand, right? So number one, I did like how they showed that Thorfinn still knows, reason with him, right? So he's not this dude hell-bent on revenge and whatnot. He actually knows what he's supposed to be doing. He actually knows that his father does not want this. He actually knows that what he should be doing is going back and taking care of his family, his mom, his sister. He knows all that, right? He's just simply too stubborn to admit it. But that means that he can yet be saved, right? So that is one thing that I like. Number two, I did like how they showed this conversation, this one-on-one conversation, this private conversation between Thorfinn and Askeladd, right? I was hoping for this kind of scene throughout the past few episodes. I really want to know the dynamics of their relationship and how they actually really treat each other. And of course, the dialogue that spawned from that is also quite interesting, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And on a third note, or on the last note as well, right? The ending of this episode. Askeladd, man, like I said, he is a natural leader in this situation. Like, no matter how reckless this thing may be, he's got the guts, right? He's just got the how should I say it? I'm not sure if there's a sufficient English word to say to use for this, but he has a kingly aura, right? He has this kind of aura within him. He knows what to do in these kinds of conditions, and I absolutely love it. And I still maintain my thought that he absolutely reminds me of Cacao, of the founder of the Wei during the Three Kingdoms period and whatnot, and even his actions here really mirror Cacao as well, right? Because Cacao basically tried to gain power by controlling the emperor, right? He controlled the emperor, and so he could give out orders on the emperor's behalf, and nobody could do anything about it, right? And in this case, I guess it's not exactly one-on-one similar, but he is basically saying the prince is a valuable target. Let's get the prince, and then we'll be able to do whatever we want to do, right? In this case, he's simply looking at the riches, the fortune that he will get by either going to the English or the Danish, but potentially, right, if he rescued the next in line to a kingdom, well, that would also curry a lot of favor as well, wouldn't it? So I did love this, and he was like, no hesitation, right? Immediately making the decision right then and there. I love it. So, but then again, Askeladd has, as I've said, it has up to now always been my favorite character here, and this just continuously solidifies it. Right. So that was my thoughts on the episode. Let's get into the historical references here, right? And more specifically, let's talk about the scene between Askeladd and Thorfinn first, when they were talking with each other. So first of all, the background of where they were at, right? So they were out near the outskirts of Bath, and so they saw some Roman ruins there, right? And that is absolutely true. And the whole reason that Bath is called Bath in the first place is because that was a spot for Roman baths and spas, right? So absolutely accurate there. And it also ties in with the character of Askeladd, right? You guys have been telling me to, take heed of whenever Askeladd is praying or saying an oath or something in the name of his ancestors. So indeed, I looked it up, and it seems that his ancestors are probably Romans, and indeed, maybe one of them is the I guess is the archetype for King Arthur of the legends, so he has this kind of lineage within him, right? And so that is why he would be even more melancholic whilst he is overlooking these Roman ruins, right? They probably represent his heritage to a certain extent. Now, and another funny thing about that specific place, which I actually did not know, I looked this one up, is that it's also Bath is also supposedly the battle place of the Battle of Badon, or Baden, or however you want to pronounce it, which again is also a historical, maybe fictional battle of which King Arthur took part in. So we got a lot of those kinds of references there as well. And I also did like his entire speech about how kingdoms come and go and whatnot, and we have our age, but it will eventually come to an end and go on to the next one. It's especially relevant to this period of time right here because if we look at the history of England, right? So first of all, originally there were the Britons, right? The Celtics, which were then later conquered by the Romans, which then were later conquered or driven out by the Anglo-Saxons. And then right now what they're doing is they are Norsemen and kicking out or invading or taking over the Anglo-Saxons, if you will. Later on down the road, they'll actually get it back until they are eventually conquered by the Normans as well. William the Conqueror. So, and this is a period of time where England rapidly changes hands to lots of these different forces, if you will. So I did like that sort of reference there as well. Another thing that they actually talk about there is in regards to Ragnarok, right? And indeed, Ragnarok, Twilight, they sort of have the same kind of meaning, Twilight of the Gods, if you will, which is what the derivative of Ragnarok came from. But to me, actually, the more interesting thing here is how they mention Last Judgment of Christianity, Doomsday, Judgment Day, whatnot, with the concept of Ragnarok, right? And this is especially compelling to me because, see, there is this sort of theory out there that the concept of Ragnarok has been influenced by Christianity, the Book of Revelations, the concept of Judgment Day, and that is what turned into the Ragnarok that we know right now. This is only a theory, and we will never know truly how Ragnarok came to be because, well, it ties back in with what I've mentioned from the very first episode on how the Norse have oral tradition rather than written tradition, which is they pass their history through oral, right? They pass their stories down through stories that are told by mouth. And so throughout these years, it's easy for them to change, to shift and whatnot. Indeed, what we know about Ragnarok mostly comes from something called the Poetic Edda, which is basically a written collection of all of these different poems and stories and whatnot of ancient Norse. Similar to how the sagas, if you will, are also written stuff of the old stuff, the old stories and whatnot that were told orally. All right, it's a similar concept here. So and so basically the theory is, since we don't really know when Ragnarok, the concept of Ragnarok came to be, it's hard to say concretely whether or not it was influenced by Christianity in the first place, right? Because Christianity, remember, even the New Testament and whatnot, the Book of Revelations, it came like hundreds of years before this concept, specifically, the concept of Ragnarok actually appeared in text, right? So it's entirely possible that whilst the concept of Ragnarok was being developed as a religion, it got some influence from Christianity as well. And so that's why I felt particularly tickled by this sort of by putting Ragnarok and Judgment Day, Last Judgment side by side here. So interesting trivia. There's no real concrete thing I can say about this. I just want to point out how these two can be related in some sort of way, right? So these are all the historical stuff that I did like about this episode, and how they're trying to work the character Askeladd into the current context of the era that they are in, and the geographical location they are in, and so on and so forth, right? So I did like that part. Now, however, I do think that they are also taking a little bit too much liberty with some other stuff, right? So in the last episode, or was it 2 episodes before, I already mentioned my my disappointment, I guess you could say, where they sort of changed history by saying that King Ethelred has already fled to France here, and only Torkel is left manning the fort, if you will. So again, based on a lot of different sources, that is presumably not what happened. In fact, some sources just say that the entire reason that London still held out was not even because of Thorkel, but because Alfred was there rallying his men there, right? Now, again, a lot of these sources are English, and so that means they can be biased. But the thing is, you only disprove something when proof of something else, an alternative, does come out, right? And if you don't have a sufficient alternative, you're not supposed to just easily, say something else and just discredit the sources, right? Even if we do believe that they may be biased in some sort of way. And perhaps even more, the other thing, actually, even more, so this one is like a direct conflict with what is historically written, right? And I said before, right? They have a lot of liberty they can take with it. They can do a lot of different stuff that they want. And in this case, they instead said that Thorkel actually came out of this and broke the siege by himself, and now he's chasing after the main army with Canute in tow. Now, is this possible that it could happen? Maybe, right? Because there's no historical record of this. It's highly implausible, however, because think about it from a logical perspective. Even if these chronicles of England at this time are biased towards the Anglo-Saxons, towards the English, they would absolutely want to write something as badass as breaking a siege and then chasing after the main army into their chronicles, right? They would absolutely want to put that into their chronicles, their historical records, or so on and so forth, right? So, and originally, when they said that Canute was going to be left there with 4,000 men, I was like, did this really happen? Don't know. Does it matter? It's fairly okay for me because even if the historical records do not mention of this, it's still possible that it could happen, right? Maybe they want to save face and they didn't want to appear weak when there's only a small contingent of forces still left within the siege, right? That's actually doing a siege. So it's possible that they omit information from there. In this case, however, with Thorkel charging out with 500 men against 4,000 and now chasing after the main army, you can bet your ass that they would write that in. And since it appeared nowhere, I'm gonna say that is bollocks, right? So yeah, and the main thing I want to bring up with this is, I know this is an anime, right? They want to make it interesting, they want to make it exciting and whatnot. The thing is, though, this period of time already has a lot of holes. It already has a lot of liberties for you to take, for you, the author, to take. You could do a lot of things without deviating from written history here. So why do something that's not only directly challenging written history, but also doing some other stuff that really it's impossible to do without at least some sort of record being left, right? I don't know. It's not like this series has to follow history to 100% accuracy, but up to this point, they've been doing such a good job, right? They're referencing all the right dates, they're referencing, the things that they're wearing and whatnot. It's all accurate. The character relations and the overall meta, the macro world concepts that are there are all accurate as well. Why mess it up with these, to me, kind of unnecessary changes, right? Unless the author is trying to make it so far-fetched, so out of the ordinary that nobody would mistake this for factual history, right? That's also a possibility, but in this case, I do hope that people aren't, confused by this, right? Everything that's happening for these past 2 episodes has pretty much fiction, right? You can never prove it because we don't have the records on hand, but just thinking about it logically, this cannot happen, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know, I just feel like this is a missed opportunity for, if you guys recall my discussion from, I believe, the last episode or 2 episodes ago, I said I really want to see the author's take on the situation because there's so many holes here that you can fill in and you can let your creativity run wild to fill in these holes. But instead he's choosing something that's, he's basically brute forcing this, if you will, right? I think the best analogy for this is that instead of carefully working through all the nooks and crannies of this period of history, he's basically brute forcing it, punching a hole directly into what we already know. So there we go. And again, don't get me wrong, like, I'm still enjoying this series as it is. I just felt that, as a, as a historian, I would have really liked if they could still keep with the actual historical record, right? So again, these are two different concepts. As an anime viewer, I'm still really intrigued by what's going to happen, and of course, having 500 men chasing after a main army and then another 100 men going and intercepting it, that's fun, right? That's hype. That is lots of good stuff. That gets your blood boiling. The historian in me, however, is more like, there's no. So anyways, that's been, it's over 15 minutes now. You guys probably don't want to listen to much more, but anyways, those are my thoughts of Vinland Saga episode 10. So let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next week as well. Bye bye.